So the Biden regime was relentlessly pursuing any and all effective Republican organizations and individuals. Not only was Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA group targeted by the Department of Justice and FBI under Biden, but so too was former Trump legal counsel during the 2020 election legal challenge, Dr. John Eastman. Millions of dollars are spent investigating these groups. Money that could have been spent better on we, the people, but instead was used to harass and terrorize legitimate conservative groups and representatives. Like even My Pillow. My Pillow. Now, this is what they meant on the left when they started referring to former President Joe Biden as, quote unquote, Dark Brandon during the 2024 presidential campaign. Tyranny, my friends, was in the air, and it is indeed dark. Joining us now is Dr. John Eastman, who's a constitutional scholar and is with the Claremont Institute. He was also a target of Arctic frost. But at this point, Dr. John Eastman, I literally scrolled specifically to see if you were on the list because I just assumed you probably were, along with the Mayor Rudy Giuliani with My Pillow. It turns out a couple of banks, remember we've talked about the banking issue because you've been debanked like Mike Lindell has, but there were a couple of banks on that list. And I talked to Mike last night and he said, I'm the only people that would be banking at that Minnesota bank. So it was about me. John Eastman, I don't think there was a list in the Biden regime that you weren't on. Good to see you.
Thanks very much. And to you and all your audience, happy Constitution Day, a monumental day in world history where our framers of the Constitution passed their handiwork on to the people to decide whether or not to ratify it.
Well, and we're working so hard to go back to our constitutional principles, right? When you heard this news, were you made aware of this before Senator Chuck Grassley put that out?
Well, I didn't know there was an actual list. I knew that I'd been targeted by the Jack Smith team. The search warrant for my phone that was hand delivered with sex-armed FBI agents who detained not just me, but my wife, who refused to show me the warrant before they confiscated my phone, who forced my face to look at the phone so they could open it on facial recognition without ever showing me the warrant. And even after they gave me the warrant after the fact, it did not include the attached affidavit that identified the specificity supposedly required by the Fourth Amendment. And so I knew that this had gone on. I didn't know there was a list that had me on it, but it doesn't surprise me. Of course, my banks, Bank of America and USAA, both canceled me, and one suspects that it was because of intrusive ongoing inquiries from these regulators and these investigators that they said this personal account, which generates not a whole lot of income for us because I pay my bills on time, is not worth the hassle we're getting from the feds.
So you think possibly that the debanking by Bank of America and USAA that you experienced was perhaps a result even of the inquiries as a part of this Arctic frost investigation?
Well, I've not seen evidence to connect those dots, but it makes a perfect sense to me. I also think they were willing participants in it. I think the corporate boardrooms in both institutions is pretty woke, and if they had any excuse to cancel a prominent conservative, they were more than happy to take it instead of fighting it. But I do think that the regulators, whether DOJ and the FBI or the banking regulation institutions, were harassing them for my data. What kind of transactions was I engaged in and where, in order to try and create and manufacture a case against me that would somehow tie to President Trump.
These cases, so we're seeing this as part of the Senate hearing where Grassley discloses this information, but there were other investigations, right, at the state level that were also targeting you. They're also falling apart. Case in point, I believe it was just last week. Actually, it was on September the 9th. A Michigan judge dismissed the electors case, right, against 15 people in Michigan. They're known as the alternate electors. That was dismissed, which was great news for those people who have been under the pressure of this ongoing prosecution. And I've talked to a few of them. Can you imagine being basically a regular person and just having that? Well, yeah, you can. And then now, yesterday, there was the breaking news related to Fani Willis as the Georgia Supreme Court refused to take up her appeal. They slapped her down, but they didn't exactly disbar her. You're one of the defendants in the Fani Willis case, amongst, also the president of the United States. People kind of forget that's been hanging out in the background, right, Dr. Eastman? So what happens now? The Supreme Court shot down her appeal. Is this going to fall apart, or are they going to appoint another prosecutor and try to keep this going?